Zoo-wee mama, we are back today with another episode of Buy or Bust, this time looking at the new card Wiccan, who will be coming to Marvel Snap on August 13th alongside Loki and Pixie in Spotlight caches. Wiccan is a 4-cost, 7-powered card with the on-reveal ability that if you spent all of your energy this game, it will give you +2 max energy. So throughout this video, I'm going to go over Wiccan's best synergies, his counters, the good, the bad. I'll give you some deck ideas. And then at the end, I'll just give my final ratings and predictions for this card. So let's start off with some of Wiccan's best synergies. So to kick things off, we have Quicksilver. Okay, Quicksilver now has value in the game. If you want to play Wiccan, you're probably going to want to play Quicksilver. Okay, I don't know if you need to play Domino, but turn one, again, if you miss that turn and you don't spend any energy, Wiccan just doesn't work, okay? Wiccan's all or nothing. In order to get the +2, you need to have spent all your energy on turns 1, 2, and maybe 3 if you went to play Wiccan on turn 4. So Quicksilver might actually be needed, and then you could just have a couple 2-cost cards in your deck. Then say you have 3 or 4 of them, you've got 2 turns to draw them. But even if you have 3 or 4 1-costs, like there's a decent chance you don't draw one by turn 1. So Quicksilver might be kind of decent now. Pretty crazy. What a time to be alive. And then we've got Zabu. Okay, I mentioned Wiccan maybe coming out on turn 3 or 4. I really think you want Wiccan out early. Okay, I think you want to treat him like Mr. Negative. You want to do Quicksilver on 1, into Zabu or Psylocke on turn 2, into Wiccan on turn 3. This means starting on turn 4, you would have 6 energy. Okay, whereas if you wait until turn 4 to play Wiccan, you don't get that advantage until turn 5. So turn 5 you have 7 energy. But that's not that crazy. It's much better to have 6 energy on turn 4 than it is to have 7 energy on turn 5, because hitting that 6-cost threshold just allows you to play all a 6-cost card. Okay, it's really big. And so I really think you want to try and ramp Wiccan out. It's also less turns that you could potentially miss some energy. And then we've got a card like Scar, okay? Now we're going to have to brainstorm with Wiccan. He's not super easy to deck build with. I came up together with 3 decks. I don't think any of them actually use Scar, but I do think there's potential for something like Scar. If we're planning to ramp stuff out early, we might be getting some really big things on the board, in which case Scar could actually get really cheap. If we end up just slapping down big things, starting on turn 5, something like Scar could come in. Okay, we have to think of, once we get all of this extra energy from Wiccan, what do we now do with it? Okay, are we going for some wombo combo, or are we just playing down big cards? And so I'm excited to see, if a card like Scar can synergize or not. Now, in terms of locations that Wiccan would love to see on the board, we've got anything that draws you a card. Okay, obviously there's like Hell's Kitchen, which draws you a 1-cost card, but you can also just have Nova Roma, or any locations that just draw you any number of cards, because the more cards you have, the more likely you are to fill out your curve and spend all your energy. And then something like Castle Blackstone really rewards tempo. These are decks that get started early. And if you're playing Wiccan, you're doing that. You're playing to play something on turn 1, on turn 2, either Wiccan or something else on turn 3. And so you are getting good tempo on the board. So some locations that reward these early plays are actually going to feel pretty nice. Now some cards that Wiccan would not like to see, okay? So if you're not planning to get Wiccan, but you want to counter him, these may be some good options. First up, we've got Iceman. Iceman is going to be so annoying, okay? Imagine you're playing Wiccan, and you got Quicksilver on turn 1. In hand, maybe you have Psylocke and Wiccan. You're ready to just play Psylocke, turn 2 into Wiccan, and then an Iceman comes down and just hits your Psylocke or something. And then you have nothing on turn 2, and now Wiccan is just a 4/7, right? Anything your opponent can do to really just mess with your hand, especially with the cost, is gonna suck more than usual, okay? And then we've got something like Black Widow. Again, messing with your hand. If you can't get your draws, then you're not going to get benefit out of Wiccan. Either it's going to be harder to get him to trigger, or you get him to trigger and you have the extra energy, but you don't have the cards in hand to take advantage of it. You have too much energy. You literally cannot spend it all. Okay, you can't pull off your combo. So if your opponent is playing Black Widow or they're shuffling rocks into your deck and you're drawing these rocks, well, so what if you have like 7 or 8 energy? You have a bunch of rocks in your hand, okay? It doesn't matter. And so hand manipulation, again, is going to be really annoying to deal with. And then lastly, a card that's actually pretty strong right now is Sandman. Okay, Sandman is good right now, and Wiccan is scared of Sandman. If you have 8 energy on turn 6 because you played Wiccan earlier in the game, but your opponent played Sandman, you might as well just have 6 energy on turn 6. Okay, you cannot take advantage of it in that scenario. So Sandman's going to be really annoying. He's already really strong, and he may even see a bit more play when Wiccan first comes out with people trying to counter him. So it's going to be tough. So to talk about the good and the bad for Wiccan, first up with the good, he has +2 energy at once, and he's really the only card that does that flat out. You could kill X23 multiple times, but again, you have to kind of maneuver that. There's no card that technically just says, hey, do this and get +2 max energy. But it's not the biggest energy ramp we actually have. I mean, if you look at the flip side, unless your opponent is playing Mobius, if you play Sarah, and then turn 6 you played 3 cards, it's because you got -1 cost discount on 3 of those cards. You essentially had +3 energy, right? So even though +2 energy sounds really big, we have bigger energy discounts that have been in the game. I mean, look, Wiccan's in here alongside Loki. Loki's giving -1 energy to all the cards you draw. And so he's getting bigger energy value than Wiccan is. Now you can get Wiccan over multiple turns, and then it's kind of a different story. But it is important to note he's the biggest right away just boost in max energy, and he doesn't get countered by Mobius. He does have a base of 7 power now. Originally when he was data mined, he had 5 power, and I thought that was really bad. Honestly, I thought it was really risky, because if his ability doesn't work, he's just stats. If you miss any energy on any turns before playing Wiccan, he is just a 4/7, but 7 power isn't bad. War Machine is a similar kind of card where he can kind of fall flat. He just got buffed to 7 power. Okay, that's nice base power. Okay, that's decent. Again, you really want to aim for a turn 3 play, which if you do get, turn 4, you now can play a 6 cost card. That is bigger ramp than Arishem. Arishem cannot play a 6 cost card until turn 5, unless they got a discount from Quinjet or Loki. So it's possible still. It's kind of crazy. Arishem's just good. There's a question of if we can make new archetypes. Now, usually this doesn't work, okay? It honestly doesn't. Usually a card comes out, and if your initial thought is, in order to play this card, I have to build this whole new deck around this card, it's usually not a good idea. Okay, it just doesn't work. We even see that with Ajax. Ajax right now is performing pretty well in shells where it's just like him and Hazmat thrown in, not a whole deck, built around him. And sometimes cards do build an archetype. We have Arishem, we have Baron Zemo, making Mill a thing. But a card has to be really, really good to do that. They have to do something really crazy, and I'm not sure Wiccan does that. Even if it is really crazy, I'm not sure he does it consistently. He definitely doesn't do it consistently, okay? So this is a bit of a question mark. It's going to be fun to experiment with, but if his only possible homes are some kind of new archetype coming together, it may fall flat. And then, do we have a Zabu buff incoming? I mean, Zabu helps Wiccan, and Zabu just helps a lot of other 4-cost cards that are hurting. So maybe this is a start. Maybe we have Wiccan for now with current Zabu, which does synergize, but maybe in the future, Zabu gets a bit of his former power back, as Second Dinner has alluded to that they do want to change Zabu again to make him decent. Okay, so it's possible that Wiccan right now isn't as good as he will be in the next month or two if Zabu gets that buff that Second Dinner has alluded to. Now, in terms of the bad, and I've mentioned some of the bad already, if you haven't been able to tell, I'm not super big on Wiccan. I just don't have the highest hopes. In terms of the bad, it's an all or nothing. I do not love this, okay? If Wiccan triggers, he gets +2 max energy. Okay. If he doesn't, you just get nothing, right? It's not a, you get +1 if you miss a turn. No, you just get nothing. He's just a 4/7. And I think that feels really bad. I do not like that. I just don't. Okay, I'm not a fan, because you're going to see that floor a lot, and we'll talk about that next. And again, he's often nothing. And we know people miss turns all the time or float energy because Red Hulk is really good. Red Hulk scales up so fast because your opponent's constantly missing energy. So if you need to play Wiccan, you are going to have to adjust your deck. You're either going to have to build a new archetype or take an existing deck and swap out multiple cards to be able to try and get him somewhat consistently. If he does work and you get the +2 energy, then again, we go back to the problem I mentioned before. Like, what if your draws aren't there? Okay, what if you're drawing some rocks or you just drew your cheap stuff and now you have too much energy, you can't even spend it, right? It's more than what might actually be necessary. Are you just safer off playing Sarah, okay? And he is best on turn 3, which I mentioned could be really good. Turn 4, you have 6 power. But the odds of that happening, the odds of getting Psylocke or Zabu into Wiccan, especially if you have to start that combo off with Quicksilver on turn 1, means you have lower odds of drawing Zabu or Psylocke, lower odds of drawing Wiccan. So the odds are at best what Mr. Negative would get, but it's actually a bit worse because of the Quicksilver. And so it's just not going to happen all the time, okay? If you're playing Wiccan, you have to understand you're not going to get the +2 max energy all the time. And maybe that's okay, but you have to be comfortable of him having a pretty low consistency. Remember War Machine. Again, a card that on paper looks pretty good, looks really powerful, but it's just the base stats often, okay? Wiccan is just a 4/7. You need to have that mindset, I really believe. Sometimes it's better, and that's great, but you need to have the mindset that he's a 4/7. And again, just play Sarah or just play Arishem. This is my friendly reminder to give this video a like, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button if you have not already, because in addition to covering every single new card coming to Marvel Snap, I also help you plan out how you will spend your resources with my season spotlight ratings and my Series 4 and Series 5 buy guide tier list, which I will be updating for the month of August very soon. Now it's time to visualize Wiccan's floor and his ceiling, and we've already talked about this, and it's actually very straightforward. His floor is that his on reveal didn't trigger, okay? Somewhere along the line, you missed energy spending, okay? Whether it's turn 1, if you weren't playing Quicksilver, or you were playing Quicksilver, but turn 2, you didn't draw your 2 costs, he's just gonna do nothing, okay? Or maybe even get him on turn 6, and then on turn 6, the energy doesn't matter if it's the last turn of the game. And so, it's actually not the worst. He's still 4/7. That is still just decent power. Okay, I think Second Dinner buffing him from 4/5 to 4/7 was a good call because that floor is viable. It's definitely not competitive though. Now his ceiling is that you're getting a +2 max energy, but that you're ramping him out. You're getting a turn 3 Wiccan on the board and he triggers. So here's a 4/7 and you're getting the +2 max energy. When that happens, I think that's really good. Okay, if that happened all the time, it would be overpowered. It's obviously not going to happen. Again, look at this like Mr. Negative. When Mr. Negative works, especially if you hit Jane Foster after, like you're pretty much winning that game. Okay, your odds are really, really good. But it's just not happening all the time. And so on average, well, I think he has this Mr. Negative consistency. Again, it's actually maybe worse because you might need to play Quicksilver in there. And so I look at him as a 4/7, sometimes more. Okay, I'm not looking at him as a 4/7 that gives you +2 max energy and sometimes doesn't. I'm looking at him as a 4/7 that doesn't do anything, but sometimes does. Okay, I'm expecting to see the floor more than the ceiling. If you think Wiccan sounds OP, it's because you're staring up at the ceiling and you're not looking at this floor and seeing that he's a 4/7. So the first deck that I've put together for Wiccan is this formerly Negative Tribunal deck, okay? Now, I wondered, would you want Mr. Negative and Wiccan in the same deck? I think the answer is no. I think it's too much setup, right? If we here had Quicksilver trying to get Psylocke or Zabu into Mr. Negative or Wiccan, the odds of that happening if we have Mr. Negative and Wiccan are both higher, but then the odds of actually getting the power pieces that we're working so hard for are lower, okay? We can't put all of our energy, all of our time, all of our commitment into just this buildup, right? Once we get the buildup, once we play Mr. Negative, or in this case play Wiccan, we need to be able to use that energy to win the game, okay? That's Wiccan. You know, just getting Wiccan to trigger is half the battle, but then you still have to use the energy to try and win. It's not just an auto win. I don't even think it's as big as Mr. Negative, but here we have a Mr. Negative type deck where we've got Tribunal in here. You can get Wiccan, hopefully on turn 3, but maybe it comes down turn 4. But when that happens, even if we do not draw magic, we could get down our Onslaught or Living Tribunal really early. Okay, as early as turn 4, and then, you know, you go for the Onslaught, Iron Man, Living Tribunal combo. We've also got Mystique in here. On turn 6, we will have 8 energy. Could do an Iron Man Mystique. Turn 7, you have 9 energy. You could do Onslaught and Mystique together on a 7th turn if you got Wiccan down and Magic. So this is definitely, you know, very big, typical kind of Mr. Negative combo deck, and it's going to feel like that. Now my second deck here continues that combo theme, this time with a full Wombo combo with Namora, Ironheart, White Tiger, and even Odin. Okay, so again, Quicksilver. I really don't think you want a deck where you have like 4 or 5 1-cost cards just to help out Wiccan. I think you just do Quicksilver, and then you have a couple 2s. I don't think you need to run Domino. So here again, we're trying to get Quicksilver into Psylocke or Zabu into Wiccan. That means turn 4, you already have 6 energy, but more so here on turn 5 or 6, you can just do some really big things, okay? You can try and do like Namora and Ironheart on the same turn. If it's turn 6 and you got Wiccan, you can do some Iron Lad stuff. You could do Wong plus Iron Lad on the same turn if you knew, you know, you have something good on the top of your deck. Or you can just do Wong plus Ironheart. I mean, there are some good combos that the +2 max energy will allow you to do, especially on turn 6. You know, you can kind of play the setup card and the power card at the same time if it comes together. And lastly, to no one's surprise, I've got Wiccan here in a Loki Arishem deck. Now, if you're watching this video, you're probably a huge Arishem fan, playing him all the time still, or you despise Arishem. Either way, Arishem seems to be here to stay. And when Wiccan comes out, one of the first places you will see him is Arishem. Does he make the deck better? I don't know. You don't draw him all the time. You actually have a pretty decent chance of getting Wiccan to trigger. I mean, turn 1, you have 2 energy, so you're either looking to play Cable, but more likely, you know, you've got some random cards in your hand. Maybe you get a 2-cost card, right? And then turn 2, we've got a couple 3s, that's going to be easy. Turn 3 is when you could play Wiccan. So it's a way to ramp out Wiccan without playing, you know, Zabu or Psylocke. And you could even put them in here, though, if you really want to go for that, but the odds of getting that are so low. And then this deck is actually a bit cheaper. We don't have as many 6s, because the thought here is we actually have +3 max energy. If Wiccan triggers and we had Arishem, we're actually going to have 9 energy on turn 6. We have 8 energy on turn 5. So turn 5, you could do, you know, Leech plus like Copycat or Agent Coulson or something. Turn 6, you can mix and match a 6-cost with actually a decent powered card. You can play a 6-cost alongside a 3-cost, okay? And you're going to have randomly generated cards as well. So to give my ratings on this Spotlight Week with Wiccan, Loki, and Pixie, in terms of the token value, these cards are all Series 5, along with almost every Spotlight Week this whole season. So it is max token value, but it's kind of just becoming the standard. In terms of being competitive, it's in an awkward spot. It's in an awkward spot because of Loki, okay? Now, I don't have the highest hopes for Wiccan, but we don't know how he's going to be, so I'm really excluding him here. Loki right now is still very good. In fact, Loki might just be amazing still, okay? Loki's strong. I personally think there's a good chance he gets nerfed, is my honesty. Second Dinner has changed him already, you know, not to just be a super big powerhouse in Arishem, not to be so annoying. I believe they're committed to not having him be one of the best cards in the game. And I think Second Dinner is committed to nerfing Loki again if needed, whether he becomes a 4-cost or they remove his initial draw. And Pixie is kind of polarizing, you know, either you play Pixie or you don't. I never play Pixie, but some people play her a good amount. She's decent, you know, she's a fine card, but some people like myself, it's just not my style. So because of Pixie and because I don't feel good recommending Loki, even though he's really good still, I don't think he's going to be really good for really long. So I'm saying competitive, it's okay. I'm kind of accounting for future Loki. But if you don't think he's going to be nerfed, it is just my thoughts and opinion there, then this would be a good competitive spot because of Loki specifically. In terms of the variants, I think they're okay. The Wiccan one's really nice. We've got Flaviano doing the spotlights all season, and he's absolutely killing it. This Wiccan one is awesome. The Loki one is okay. I do think Loki has some better variants. And I think the Pixie one is pretty good, actually. I think it's Pixie's best variant of her, different ones that are in the game. It's not my overall, favorite, but I think it's just solid. So, not a bad set of variants here, but it's okay. And for my final predictions and ratings of Wiccan himself, in terms of being fun, I think he's actually good fun, right? He's doing something new. He's challenging us to fill out our curve, and this is the opposite of like a high Evo deck where you purposely float energy, or just playing Red Hulk and seeing your opponent float energy. We are working really hard to play on curve. That's never been a huge thing in Marvel Snap, right? Surfer decks often just play nothing, like turns 1 and 2, and there's other decks that do that as well. So I think it's interesting, and trying to get this big payoff of +2 max energy, also very interesting. I think he's a pretty fun card. In terms of being flexible, no, not at all. Wiccan is the least flexible card to come out this season, because how many decks are you currently playing that are running Quicksilver? Okay, you have to build around Wiccan or heavily modify an existing deck to allow Wiccan to just try and trigger somewhat consistently. In terms of being competitive, I think he's okay. I originally had him as bad, and that's when he was a 4-5, because I'm like, well, he's just a 4-5, right? Again, I'm looking at it as he's often has no ability, and then he sometimes does something, right? So now I look at him as often a 4-7 that does nothing, but sometimes he'll give you +2 max energy, and that will feel pretty cool. So I just think he's okay, right? And this is where I have Mr. Negative. I look at him as very similar. Zabu does get buffed one day. That does help out Wiccan a bit. If he gets more, helping pieces, with draw stuff, drawing on time, like how Quicksilver or Domino do, that could help. Some other cards like Speed, who's coming out next week, but, more cards that synergize with this energy spending, that could be good for him. As of right now, I would be very, very surprised if he ends up just being like a competitive card out the gate. I think it's going to take time to find a deck that works, if there is even one that works and is really competitive. Okay, so I'm not sure he's just bad anymore, because 7 power is not horrible when it misses, and again, War Machine is now a 4-7, but I definitely don't think he's a good card by any means. Again, if someone is thinking he's overpowered, you're just looking at the Exodia combo. You're looking at the best possible scenario. We're not playing Yu-Gi-Oh!, but this is a trap card, if I've ever seen it. So let me know your thoughts on Wiccan, what you think his best synergies are, what decks you're planning to play him in. He's pretty hard to deck build with, I gotta admit. So if you have a better deck ideas, let me know in the comments down below. And until then, stay positive. I'll see you next time.